Okay, so we got to talk about a couple things here. No, I don't work for Etsy or anything like that, but everybody's all up in arms about the reserves, the star seller, what else? Oh my God, all the mass-produced items, blah, blah, blah. So much so that last year or the year before, a bunch of people tried to boycott Etsy and go to the media saying they want to go on strike, like calling for the Etsy sellers to go on strike. What? What are you talking about? How are you going to make money if you're not selling or you decide to close your shop? Who's that helping? So, okay, let's start. I got to stay focused here. This isn't going to be the pleasant, content that you're probably used to from me. It's more of a rant. I'm seeing all the time, like people are complaining that they're, the reserve this, reserve that. Well, I'm going to show you what this means right here. So if you were to sign in and you click register, create your account, blah, blah, blah. If you look down here, it literally says the first thing, by clicking register or continue, you agree to Etsy's terms of use and privacy policy. That's it. You agree to the terms of use. You agree that Etsy can hold your payments if they so choose. That's it. You have no recourse. You have recourse outside of Etsy. You can maybe get, a lawyer to release your funds for something like that, but you'd have to go a legal route that's going to cost you more money anyway. And the alternative would be for you to maybe go sell on a different platform, which if you're thinking like eBay or Amazon, they also have the rights to hold your funds. So all you're doing when you're going on and on about going to a news media outlet and all this stuff is, I'm not targeting one person here. Like I've seen this multiple times. This is just like going back to the boycotts. All you're doing is decreasing consumer confidence, right? You're instilling doubt from the consumer perspective, which is in turn what? Going to drive stock prices down, which is in turn what? Going to reduce sales, right? People are going to stop buying, directly impacting me, other sellers on Etsy, not just shop owners. And it's also going to create consumer doubt, right? Which also means probably less seller support, right? There's already a lack of seller support with, the chat and stuff like that. It's harder and harder to get a hold of somebody at Etsy. We don't need to make it any harder than it already is. And for the love of whatever you love, stop blaming sellers on Etsy for reselling mass-produced items that you find on like some of the Chinese wholesale websites like Alibaba or AliExpress. I know for a fact that some of my own listing photos, my wife's too, friends of ours, many people have had their listings, their photos, everything, designs stolen by people selling on the Alibabas of the world, or the AliExpresses of the world. And so that you do a bit of research and then you see them on AliExpress and you assume that seller is selling mass-produced Chinese stuff, when in actuality they're just trying to continue to make money doing what they've always done, and the people on those websites are the ones that have stolen their stuff. So stop saying that sellers are all reselling things when a lot of the times it's not the case at all. Yes, it's a growing epidemic. Yes, there's a lot of sellers just reselling stuff and getting away with it. Eventually they will get shut down. Is it a priority of Etsy's to kind of curb this stuff? Probably. Do we see it? No, I don't know. We're too preoccupied with other stuff like the star seller or the reserves, right? Those are directly impacting some sellers. So star seller, for example, no secret. You can now search filters, there's boxes you can take to filter your searches. There's, you might only have access to chat in Etsy if you're a star seller. The three main criteria for being a star seller are also coincidentally the main criteria for getting you out or alleviating the risk of being put on a payment reserve, right? They want you to have short processing times. They also want you to hit those processing times. Better to have a longer processing time and hit it than have a shorter one and go over. That'll almost guarantee a reserve from what I'm reading in the forums. The other thing that I think is cause for the reserve is processing times, because even star sellers are getting put on reserve. Nowhere does it say that being a star seller will absolve you from getting put on a reserve. It says that getting a star seller when you're on a reserve might get you out of it. So now that we've established that the reserve is here, get ready for it. You're running a business. So when I see like people saying that, they get $100 or $200 a day on average orders and they're broke now, well, you need to have a cushion. You don't open a business without having some kind of like cushion, right? So like if you're treating this like a business and you want to actually grow your shop, put a percentage of your sales aside. If not for taxes, come tax time, put it aside as your buffer, right? If you're using using print on demand, for example, it's a space I'm in and I sell a lot of. Use a points credit card. You're going to need a credit card because you have to pay in advance before you get your funds released half the time, right? So if I get orders on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I get my payouts on a Monday, I still have to process those orders. It still costs money. It comes out of my account before I get paid, and then I get reimbursed, right? So the goal is to use that money and all the money you get from Etsy, put it somewhere safe. Have a separate, account that it goes into, and then you don't touch it, or you only use it for funding your Etsy, right? Like that's your Etsy shop. You're not using it to, I don't know, pay for the gas bill, do this, do that yet. Wait till you have a certain amount, build it up, $100, $500, $1,000. Once you hit that threshold that you can kind of sustain yourself for, I don't know, a week, two, whatever it is that you're on reserve, then any extra from that you can put towards all the other things you need to do. And that's just good business, right? Like you need to be able to have some liquidity there. And what are the reserves? For those of you who don't know, Etsy says a reserve is an amount of money pending settlement as indicated in your payment account. So it's a chunk of money that they will eventually release to you, but that they can hold. It'll be placed on your account if we believe there may be a high level of financial risk associated with you, your account, your business model, or your transactions. So literally everything. They can deem anything, and they don't tell you what criteria they use to determine whether they think you're a high risk. So Etsy takes into account a bunch of risk factors here. And it also says not only these are some of the factors and whether and how these factors have changed. So it's not just the factors, it's not just these bullet points here, but it's how they've changed over time within your account. So the first one is how long you've been in business on Etsy, including how long since you made your first sale. So just because you had your shop for 7 years, you may have only started selling a year ago, right? So just because you've had your shop for a long time doesn't absolve you from anything. The next point is details of your sales, including volume and average sales earnings. So over time, if you're scaling up your shop and then all of a sudden there's a peak, well, that's kind of what happened, right? That's why we have reserves. Remember, the pandemic hit. Masks became a mandate. The first people who started selling masks, boom, went through the roof. What was happening there? Processing times were out the window. People were filing chargebacks, claims, all this stuff. All these things that the reserve is there to do is to mitigate Etsy's risk. So now all these up in arms customers are complaining that they're not getting all of their items from the people who are selling masks. What happened with the masks? It ended up being a shortage. So even people that were selling masks couldn't fulfill their orders either. So they had to refund stuff. So it's just liability, right? Ultimately. So details of your sales, including volume and average sales earnings. So if Etsy sees that there's a sudden spike or there's a red flag there, and especially if you're not able to fulfill a certain amount of orders. So if you get like 3 or 4 a day, and then all of a sudden you're getting 10 a day for 4 or 5 days in a row, are you able to process those? Etsy is going to watch and see if you're able to get those out as fast as you've been getting out the 3 or 4 a day. If you're not, and they see that you're taking a little longer, if you're taking, let's say your processing times are 5 days, and you've been able to get the 3 or 4 listings a day or sales a day out in 2 days historically, right? It's great. You're well within your processing times. But now you're getting 10 a day, and it's taking you 3 days. Now it's taking you 4 days. Etsy says, well, holy crap, your processing times are now double, right? The actual time it takes you to get your items out have now doubled. This is a massive red flag, right? All of a sudden, it's 200%. All of a sudden, it's taking you twice as long to get your stuff out the door. You've only got 1 day left on your cushion of processing time. Whether or not that even matters that you're hitting, Etsy is seeing that it's taking you twice as long. The next one is the extent of any backlog orders from your shop. So anytime you've bumped out an order, don't do this, right? If you can help it, extend your shipping times from the get-go. Like, it's double-edged sword here. So Etsy wants, short processing times, but they also want you to ship as fast as possible. So ultimately, they want you to provide the best possible experience for the customer, right? The shopper. So if you have backlogs in your orders, so do you have that influx of orders? Do you pushed out, the turnaround time, the due out time on any of those orders, right? If you have, you haven't. If you start, that's going to raise a flag. The availability of shipping and tracking information. So Etsy also says that if you provide tracking, they may release your reserve funds. Well, it used to be if you added tracking, you're clear. They'll release your funds. Then it was you had to see motion. It had to be, showing as in motion, like scanned by USPS or whoever. Then they release your funds. Then it had to show that it was actually delivered. And that's what seems to be the case now. But this only says says that they may release your funds with the availability of tracking. Now it doesn't say anywhere that they will release your funds just because you update an order with tracking, because people were just putting in, bogus numbers or saying that it doesn't have tracking, right? So the availability of tracking information is one, but again, it goes back to, so the other one is the goods you sell, like whether they're ready to ship or made to order. So depending on your processing times, again, these are not like strikes necessarily, they're just things that are going to be considered, right? So ratio of cases, disputes opened by buyers in respect of your sales. So, is how many cases have you had prior? Have you had any, cases that were decided by Etsy that you couldn't resolve yourself? Massive red flag, right? Suspensions or warnings already received, obvious. So estimated delivery times and shipping times of active orders. So this also goes to the availability of the tracking information and whether it's being updated appropriately. And they go on and on about 30% examples. You can have a 30% threshold. All of this criteria here will also determine how much they hold in reserve. So ultimately, the star seller thing, this brings me to the star seller thing, because if you can maintain your on-time shipping and tracking, and your orders with tracking are high, like 99, 98%, if you can maintain that, you're probably going to be less likely to get put on reserve. So if we look right here at the article they have in here about what is a payment account reserve, the quick answer says to release the funds of an order from reserve, try adding a tracking number to the order. If Etsy can confirm the tracking shows the order in transit, the reserve funds will be released immediately. Maybe they will release it immediately by their standard, that being when they have processed that information, right? So we know that this is probably not entirely accurate. It's still very subjective. So like if Etsy sees this, there's tracking, so maybe there's a manual kind of component to this. Okay, the tracking has been updated. Okay, so somebody, a bot maybe sends a ding over to somebody who's got to look at it now. Well, what did that tracking say? So is it scanned? Is it processed? Has it moved? Is it showing movement? Then yeah, if yes, okay, so then they do something, on their end, they tick a box, one of 3 boxes maybe to tick. Now you've got the second one. And then maybe there's a timeline. Maybe that has after 24 hours after that box is ticked, right? It doesn't mean as soon as like USPS scans your barcode on the shipping label that your funds are released. I don't know, shooting in the dark here, but Etsy's quick answer is as convoluted because they can do whatever they want. And it looks like you should be good for providing, and then they go on to say if a payment account reserve is placed on a seller's account, a percentage of the funds from each new sale of physical item is set aside until the order is in transit with valid tracking. So this kind of goes up here, it's just rewording the same thing. Or it'll be for 45 days if tracking is not provided. And the payment account reserve ends after 90 days unless the shop receives a violation. So if you do a violation, they could probably extend this indefinitely. If you're in reserve and you want to get your funds released earlier, Etsy says if they can confirm that the order has shipped, the funds will be immediately released. So this isn't the, information sent to carrier. This isn't the carrier awaiting shipment. It isn't any of those, right? And sometimes USPS, for example, can take 2 days. Sometimes they don't scan the product till it's delivered. So you might be out of luck for the 3 or 4 days in transit that it takes. And they tell you right here that on average from 2021, funds were available in 1 to 2 weeks. And again, they got another out here, right? Endless amounts. They aren't always able to confirm tracking. If we can't, funds will be reserved for the full 45 days. And if your shop doesn't receive any policy violations during the reserve period, it'll be removed from your payment account after 90 days. Why was a reserve placed on my account? This is what I was talking about before. Reserves are common in online marketplaces. This is absolutely true. You want to leave and go to eBay or Amazon or whatever, you can do that. You can pay more fees because they all cost more to sell on those platforms, but be ready for another reserve on that end too. Ultimately, it protects the company, the platform you're selling on. Many sellers will, with a reserve, may be receiving an increased amount of sales, so reserve funds can provide a buffer, right? They want to make sure they get their fees, they want to make sure there's no chargebacks. Customers, how many times are you seeing an order that says, please refund me, I placed the order by accident? Sometimes it happens, sometimes it's crap, but at the same time, things happen and they don't want to be on the hook. Etsy says some of the risk factors that, some of the factors they consider when, deciding whether or not to put you on an account, on a reserve. So Etsy says the 3 main things here for reasons why you might get put on a reserve are that you made your first sale on Etsy. So pretty much any new seller who is going to get put on reserve. You experience a sudden sharp increases in sales. Any seller who happens to start doing better. And you may have recently received IP infringement. So that's an obvious one. But those factors are not limited. So, and while these are the main ones, they're also not the only ones, right? right? So Etsy always leaves an out or door open for them to have another reason. So I think it's just a matter of time before we all get put on reserve. There's too many reasons. There's too many ways that we can potentially set off that red flag that says, hey, put this shop on reserve. I think it's honestly just a matter of time. So the golden advice here is going to be to have a cash flow reserve. I don't know if you have like I saw in one post, somebody was going on about how they sold between $200 and $300 worth of orders, right? So you need to build a buffer for yourself. You got to put a percentage of your sales aside, like I said. So let's look at the bell and canvas here. You got $934 and $475. That's the average price. So let's go with material costs, $934. Shipping costs $475. Price, let's say you're pricing low at $20 just to try to get some sales. Shipping, calculate. So you're making $8. You're doing let's say you're doing a 10% off sale. Now you're making $6 in profit, right? So if you're doing 23, so if you're selling 200 a day divided by the 23, you're selling 8.69. So let's say 8.5. You're doing 8.5 orders a day times your 6.27 margin on the low end. That's $53. If you can put 10% a day away, so $5.33, right? 533 times 90, let's say 90 days, you're gonna have $500 buffer. In that time, you'll have a $500 buffer whereby you can, pay for, let's go 500 divided by, what's that, $14 divided by 14. Now you can process 35 orders. So if you're doing the 200 or 250, you said between 200 and 300. So if you're doing like 200 a day in order, I don't understand how you don't have a buffer, right? Because you're making $6 times what, 8 or 9 orders. So it's $55 a day in profit you're making. Put 10% of that away, right? Put 20% away. Put $10 every single day into a kitty so that when you get put on reserve, not if, you have something there, right? Have a credit card with a points rewards card. I have a credit card as a Canadian that allows me, that I get 3% cash back on US transactions. Works out perfect for Printify, works out perfect for my PODs, ad spend, all of that stuff. My shop's in US dollars, make it easy. You can get travel rewards, you get points, all the stuff, right? And, it accumulates and it makes it worthwhile. Put that money you get back onto the credit card every payment day or whatever it comes to you, right? That stuff adds up, and it could be, if it's cash back, that could add that to your kitty, right? And I get asked all the time about, my Merch by Amazon account, right? I do a bit of content about that. I'm going to be doing more of that. And they pay you monthly. You get paid. So whatever I sell it's June now, I won't get that until the end of July. So once that month has elapsed, so like on the 29th of the month after is when I get paid for the month prior. So if you can't have, $100 or $200 in a kitty or $300 or $400 in a little, financial cushion in a business account or something like that, or even in a cookie jar, right? Have a friggin' cookie jar on your desk that you can have some money in, that you can pay for groceries or this or that or whatever it is that you're saying, flat broke, dead broke. How do you think you're going to manage, on any other platform that has higher fees and holds your money indefinitely, 90 days all the time without tracking? Or in terms of Amazon, yeah, I'm making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, but they hold it for an entire 30 days. That's just a given. So you're always in arrears. So it's money out, money in, but you got to have a buffer. If you don't, you're going to get screwed at some point. Have that buffer. If not for, even maybe come tax time, right? Anyway, made a short story long as I usually do. So that's all there is to it. Processing times, I think, are the big one. I don't know for sure, but it seems like, Star Seller isn't absolving people from getting hit with this. So I think it's just a matter of time. It is what it is. We signed up. We agree to play in their playground. You can go elsewhere if you don't like it. Going to the news, going to the media, all that does is influence public perception about things that are going wrong with Etsy. I mean, they already posted, 500 million loss almost year over year, right? So it's not like there's already not enough, uncertainty out there, right? Customers don't need another reason to not shop on Etsy. It's been a long haul with the boycotting, the protesting, the going to the news, the, everybody needs to go on, sellers need to go on strike. Stop. Just stop it. Get a cushion ready. Get ready for the payment reserve. Save your money. Count your money. Use your reserve, your own cushion, in case you get put on reserve, because it's probably coming.